When did fake it until you make it backfire? A lot of the big instances of fraud came from fake it until you make it mentality. Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos were faking the technology until they could get it to work. Fire Festival was faking it until they could get the money together. Anna Delvey intended to make it one day, but she ponzed her way through until she would get there. Dr. Christopher Dunch, Dr. Death, was a horrible back surgeon, but he kept operating and working on patients anyway. I tend to think fraudsters don't really intend to hurt other people, they are just grossly incompetent and trying to cover their asses. I was in a Skype job interview that involved multiple rounds in one session. I talked to person A, then person B, and then person C. During the interview with person B, I was asked to talk about one of my weaknesses. After having already talked about one of my strengths, I explained that I'm very comfortable with creative problem solving, but sometimes I take for granted that the status quo exists for a reason. Person B responded, I see your point, but I don't think that's a problem in the grand scheme of things. You seem very entrepreneurial to me, and people with that motivation have a healthy skepticism for how things have to be. That was a pleasant thing to hear, especially in an industry that involves bringing in new business and keeping clients. I thanked person B and told him I'd never thought of myself as entrepreneurial, but there was something that felt true about that description. Cut to my interview with person C. First question, what are some words that people might use to describe you? Well, one thing I've been told is that I'm entrepreneurial. I'm less of a leader and more of a collaborator. I value creativity, blah blah blah. Person C, so, Kim and Ub, you said you're entrepreneurial. What businesses have you started? Might as well have quit at that point. Once I said none. Nothing I said to person C was going to convince him I wasn't full of shit. Guy I used to work with told me about when he used to work as an electrician apprentice at a plant. When there was nothing to do, which apparently was most of the time, the lead guy and him would walk out to a random spot in the plant with a ladder, a conduit bender and a bent piece of conduit. Then one of them would stand on top of the ladder and the other on the ground holding the conduit, and they'd just chit chat all day. If any of the bosses wandered by, they'd nod and pass the piece of conduit up to the guy on the ladder, who would then make a show of trying to fit it in somewhere. Said they both made it through 3 rounds of layoffs doing that. I just heard in a podcast about a guy who lived on an army base for 3 years posing as a soldier until he got caught due to drinking and driving. The guy apparently was well known and went so far as to brief incoming soldiers on and even responded to a bomb threat since he posed as an EOD tech. The guy responds to bomb threats and gets caught because of a DUI. Taught some anatomy and physiology labs to pre-nursing majors. These girls knew more about anatomy and physiology than I did. I'm an expert in ecology, but somehow I got the job of teaching this class. I figured I'd just look at the answers on the worksheets as the semester went on. When I finally got the student feedback, it was a blow to my sense of confidence. About half of them did indeed notice that I had just been looking at the worksheet answers. Went to visit my older cousin in a big city, small town girl. Before going out, he told me that the friends we would be meeting are super snobby and would probably make fun of me if I told them I was from small town A. Today I would tell him to get better friends, but when I was 18 I just wanted to fit in. We agree I would tell them I'm from city X. So the blonde bombshell in the group, 6 years older, starts talking to me while my cousin and his friend head off to buy shots. Where are you from? City X. OMG, me too. She proceeds to ask me which school I went to, which coffee shop was my favorite, and where my parents work, just making polite conversation. Of course, I do the adult thing and confess, make up an entire fake life story. My cousin gets back to the table with the shots and I have never been more grateful for the opportunity to put alcohol in my mouth and stop words from coming out. At seeing me knock back my shot like an animal, my cousin forgets our cover story and loudly proclaims, "Good God. You don't have to drink like you do in small town A, just chill." I did not look at bombshell for the rest of the night. I have seldom wanted the earth to swallow me as much as I did in that moment. I was 8 years old and I told my dance teacher I could do a backbend. I couldn't, so she moved me up a level in acro and put me in a special role for our recital. For the next week my mom tried to help me get a backbend, but it wasn't happening and I had to come clean. Luckily she didn't get too mad. I had to move back down a level, but I still got to keep my special role. A few years ago I got a job interview after months of looking. I was desperate. I thought I was going to be working in the mailroom for the city, but when I arrived it turned out it was for delivering mail between city offices. Okay, no big deal, I can do that. Well, in my province we have G1, learners, G2, still have some restrictions about when/who you can drive with, and G, full license. Well, I needed my full G for the job, but hadn't gotten around to doing the test. No big deal, I thought. I'll just go along and schedule a test as soon as possible, hopefully before any paperwork needs to be done. So I went through the interview and I think I'm home free, but no. They want to do a driver's test right then and there, and I need to present my license to the testing company. Thinking quick, I told them I don't have my license on me. Well, they need it, and they were willing to find a city employee to drive me back out to my house, 30 minutes away, and get it. Backed into a corner I finally have to admit that I don't have my G license. I blurted it out and basically ran out of the office, and didn't look back. Still one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. We hired a young woman once, let's call her Stacy, and part of her duties would be driving. One day we asked her to pick up a rental vehicle. She turned up with the vehicle, all good. Later on, someone looked at the paperwork for the truck rental and was like, "Who the F is Karen?" Turns out that due to not having a driver's license, she had lied in her interview. Stacy paid her roommate Karen to pick up the vehicle. It also turned out that Stacy had stopped at an ATM on the way back from picking up the vehicle to withdraw $40 for herself from the company credit card. We immediately dismissed her. A couple of hours later her mom called, furious, and demanded to know why she had been fired. We told her the reasons, and she said, "Oh," and hung up. I took orchestra in elementary school and I eventually realized that I was just not going to understand violin. But I still wanted to be in orchestra because it had some perks. So, whenever we had lesson I put my fingers over the strings and moved my bow around like I meant it. When we had to play individually, I had to do it for real. I thought maybe, by some miracle, I'd get it and play normally. I didn't. Not my story, but a senior back in my high school used to talk about how tough he was and how he was a black belt in karate and had plenty of boxing experience. He even brought his black belt, which I'm convinced wasn't actually his, to school one day to show it off. He eventually got the reputation of someone who was not to be messed with. He was a beefy guy, sort of a meathead. Anyhow, fast forward a bit, and he was having a heated argument with this sophomore in the hallway. People were gathering all around to watch the drama unfold. Things escalate, and he pushes the sophomore kid hard. The sophomore immediately responds with a punch square to the senior guy's nose. He drops like a sack of potatoes. And then this black belt karate expert starts crying. I would like to tell you that this was the end of the fight, but it wasn't. He gets back up, blood dripping from his nose, and swings at the sophomore with quite possibly the worst punch I'd ever seen. Tears and blood are dripping off his face as he's throwing some huge toddler tantrum, just swinging his arms like a windmill and missing every punch. Some teachers came and broke up the fight and both of them got suspended. The guy never bragged about his fighting experience again after that and sort of flew under the radar for the rest of the year. When I thought I was cool enough to eat edibles with no tolerance in Colorado before the airport to go back home, it hit me during the security checkpoint. The pressure behind my eyes began to build. The strange feeling of having to poop traveled from my head to my toes, and at this point I knew I had taken too much. I had sunglasses on, so only having to deal with security for a few moments I was able to get through this with little problems. I had an hour and a half before my plane boarded. My brother met a girl. He also ate edibles, but had a tolerance, and was walking around with her while I was too high to function. The terminal was full, no seats anywhere. No problem, I'll just sit awkwardly on the floor the wrong way and stare at these people. "Sir, are you okay?" one asks. My sunglasses were on, so I pretend to not hear them. "Why are you staring at me?" The chicken beckons. I realize my sunglasses are minimum shading, so they can see my eyes, just staring into them. "Sorry, there's nowhere to sit," I manage to say back. My anxiety at this point is through the roof, so I apologize and find somewhere else to lay down in the terminal. I find a spot near the front of the terminal near boarding area / help desk, so if I take a nap I know I'll be woken up by the line that forms / people helping me. There's maybe 50 to 60 people near me, all in the rows of seating, and I position myself legs first at them with my head on my backpack and take a nap. I don't know how long I napped for, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. I woke up startled to an extremely loud sound. It sounded like a plane had hit the building from the vibration. Turns out, I had let out the loudest and most pungent fart I've ever had deep out of my insides. I don't move. I have my sunglasses on still, and had forgotten the encounter with the chicken earlier, so I act like I'm asleep. I blasted maybe 10 people directly with my fart, and all 10 of them got up and moved immediately. The terminal is shaken up, the laughs are deep, and everyone is looking at me. The cute girls I noticed on my way in are pointing and laughing at me. The airport workers left the stand and are staring at me, talking into their walkie-talkies, laughing. I didn't move until the plane boarded, and in line everyone was still talking about it, and the staff couldn't look me in the face when I had to go through the desk with my ticket. That's it for today. See you all tomorrow. Take care.